WNST of the Washington Capitals. This is the guy that I have spent most of our professional time here, especially in the recent years, in the last decade, talking hockey in the Ovechkin era, as our insider for all things Caps coverage during our entire WNST.net era. He was not at Game 5 in Las Vegas, which gave my wife an opportunity to be on the ice and having fun, but was just as joyful, and I'm sure there with your wife and your family. Ed Frankovic has been our longtime Caps historian, insider, blogger, and now celebrator of a Washington Capitals victory. Ed, it's been quite a long, strange trip, has it not?
I tell you what, at times along the way, I wondered if this would ever happen, but Nestor, it finally did. It's just amazing. This week has been a whirlwind. It's just been a blur. It's been incredible. I've been soaking it in, celebrating. Not as crazy as our Capitals players, but hey, they deserved it. They went out and they did it, and it's amazing how long that 2-month grind is and how much it takes a toll. And I didn't even play a game. You didn't even play a game, but it was stressful. It's tiring. Can you imagine playing? And I think I can understand why these guys are just letting it all out after so many years of failure and finally doing it. They're just letting loose, and it's a joy to see.
I guess there were times along the way you would probably say of all the people in the world in your life, I was the most quietly confident. I never threw in the towel. I never thought they were done. I always saw this calm underneath of them in a way that I don't know that I talked about them that way in the past. I'm not shocked that they won. I'm not shocked that they won the way that they won. And I think pieces were coming together in early April. I certainly think when you look at the ebbs and the flows of this whole narrative, from the Grubauer thing, from the disappointments of the past, to the disappointments of 30 years ago, quite frankly, that the fan base carries around, and the anxiety at the home games and blowing the 3-2 or the 2-0 lead and being down 3-2 even in the semifinals. I thought that the finals were a real sort of exclamation mark for everything that happened, right? Like the way that they came back in the third period, the way it was a Devontae Smith-Pelly, it was, as I predicted, a Brett Connolly, it was, as you predicted, a Lars Eller, that would bring this team a championship in the end.
Yeah, I mean, Ness, you definitely were. You started the whole playoffs with the cautiously optimistic. I specifically remember an email to the Capitals PR when you were putting in your credential for Game 6 in Pittsburgh, where you said, "I believe you're going to win." So, yeah, you definitely were the positive guy all along. All season long, we talked about the potential of this team. Even last summer, when everybody was burying Brian McClellan and this team for the moves that they made, I penned a blog out at WNST.net saying they're still a contender. You and I talked several times. We still believe they were a contender. But there were times along the way in the playoffs when, just the ghost of Capitals playoffs past really felt like they weren't going to do it. I mean, the first 2 games against Columbus, they lose in overtime, and they played the wrong way. And my frustrations were there after those first 2 games in the Columbus series, because I felt like I knew this team had the ability to do it. I knew they did, but the question was, would they do it? Would they buy in? Would they play the right way? Would they listen to what Barry and Lane and Todd Reardon and Blaine Forsythe were telling them? Because I felt like if they bought into what the coaches were telling them, they could win, because I knew they had superior goaltending. I knew he would go to Holtby. That was automatic at that point. But the question was, were they going to stop playing that crazy East-West, wide open, let's give up a 4-on-2 or a 3-on-1 the other way when we've got a 2-goal lead, and let Columbus back in the game like they did in the first 2 games. And I think the switch went on, and Ovechkin saying, we're going to go win these 2 games and come back, really set the tone. But even still, it went to 2 overtimes, and Eller scores a goal that bounces in off his shin pads. But again, it was just a simple play, throw the puck to the net and see what happens. And they started learning that. And once they started doing that, they just believed, and they just kept building on it. And even with a Tom Wilson suspension and a Nicholas Backstrom broken finger, they go into Game 6 with 5 rookies and win. And that's when you started saying, hey, they're going to do it. But then they go and they lose 3 in a row to Tampa, and just just some breaks went against them, especially in Game 4. Game 3, they kind of regressed. Game 5, a bad start, but you look at the last 9 periods against Tampa, almost 9 periods. They didn't give up a goal. So this team always had the ability. The question was, could they put it all together and do it? And they finally did.
He is our longtime Caps historian, longtime suffering, along with all the rest of us, Ed Frankovic. You can follow him out at Ed Frankovic, as well as at WNST.net. I guess on a personal level, you saw my crazy dreamlike journey onto the ice and into the parties and carrying the cup around and all that. You had a whole different experience of this, and your dad and you enjoyed hockey together in the 1980s at the old Capitol Center, and you got into the business, and you obviously have a great affinity for the Button family, and I've been writing about Jack Button, and you can read my blog about kissing the Stanley Cup in Las Vegas with Barry Trotz, and yes, we're planning on bringing the Stanley Cup to Baltimore, and yes, I'm still trying to figure that out, and yes, we'll be swabbing for the bone marrow registry and probably eating a lot of crab cakes all over the Beltway if I have my say, because I'd like to take it around place to place and just stop and have it visit, some places in Baltimore. I think that'd be the appropriate way to do it. But, hey, I don't make the rules up. It's not my cup. They'll let me know whenever it happens. But I know for you had your own story with your children who love hockey and your wife, and you're a hockey family very much first and foremost. You had a Christmas morning with your kids, right?
Yeah, it was amazing, Ness. I mean, that was the thing. I just couldn't make Game 5 work, and it was even easier to not go when I knew Jen was going to be able to help out, and it was going to open the door for her. And I know what a good luck charm that girl is. You married a good one.
By the way, I took her down to Joe Beninati, who was sitting right below us between the second and third period when we were losing. We gave up the goals, right? I took her down and I said to Beninati, I said, the team needs a miracle, so I brought her along. And he gave her a hug, and sure enough, at the end of the game, we're watching Ovechkin skate the cup. And he came over, he's like, you said you had the miracle after the second period. So, yeah, my wife has been kind of a good luck charm. I'm not going to lie.
She definitely is. She is a winner, that woman. And I was so happy that you guys got, and I really appreciated the call and from you, and while Trotzy's calling you on the other line. But I mean, just to see the pictures of you, I read your entire blog. It was outstanding. I know you read my addendum to my blog. I thank my dad for getting me into this sport, and it was your dad who I know he wasn't a hockey fan, but he got you into it, as you wrote in your blog, and it just blossomed. I mean, this is a game, and I think it kind of came together for both you and I in the 80s. We were both Baltimore Colts fans, and we lost our football team, and we were looking for something else to grab onto. And we got, the Washington Capitals were there. I mean, that was the way it was for me. I mean, I was still Orioles, too, fresh coming off the 83 World Series. But in the winter, from October on, I needed something. And I loved hockey. We all know about February 1980 when the USA won the gold medal. That was nice, but the Olympics are only every 4 years. So the Capitals were emerging. You could see Scott Stevens drafted by Jack Button, who you mentioned, and David Poyle. You had the Langway trade, and that just turned the tide. And hockey quickly became it for me. And I was working in the media there. I met you, and then Mike Kerr, my good friend, and Larry Getland, two guys who were doing stats, needed a third guy, and I was able to be that guy. And certainly that's a life-changing event for me. I've met so many people in this business through that, and
the good old hockey game, right? It's the best game you can name, right? I mean, literally, that's what the fun's been for me. Seeing Dick Patrick at the party and Ted Leonsis and Zach Leonsis, but being over with Barry Trotz and being with his family and experiencing that. And being on the inside of it with guys that I really had a lot of professional respect for, seeing what's under the hood with, an Orpik, and Niskanen, Backstrom, Jay Beagle, just these high-character guys that play this game. TJ Oshie, guys that I just really enjoyed their candor after the game and their full commitment to doing this in a way that, no disrespect to any of the other sports, but it really is a different group of guys.
Yeah, Matt Niskanen's one of those guys that never runs from the media, and I know how you guys at WNST, even with your past staff, would chronicle the Ravens would lose, and Ed Reed would be gone, Ray Lewis would be gone, and they're legends in this town. But there's something to be said for when you lose a game, you coming out there and talking about it. And Matt Niskanen and Brooks Orpik are two guys that when this team loses, they're usually guys in the locker room talking because they're stand-up guys. When they win, you don't usually see those guys. I mean, Orpik rarely comes out when they win. When they lose, that guy's going to be in there talking because he's taking one for the team. He's the ultimate team guy. And that's the way a lot of these guys are. Jay Beagle I've covered since he was in Hershey, one of my favorites. First time I ever met Braden Holtby was 2008. I'm in an elevator at Kettler Iceplex. Here's a 4th-round draft pick, his first development camp, not even on the radar at all. I meet the kid in the elevator and just impressed me right from the get-go, that young man, and what a story he's gone through this year. And I just couldn't be happy for John Carlson, another guy I covered since he was drafted because Todd Button tipped me off and said, hey, the Capitals drafted a good guy in this Carlson. You got to watch him. And he, Todd tipped me off, said, hey, when they got Kuznetsov, that was a great pick at 26. He says, we had him way high up on our list, but we didn't have a pick. And he said a lot of teams passed on him because they knew he was going to stay in Russia for a few years. So, it's just watching these guys develop and then bringing the guys like Oshie in. I mean, bringing Oshie in was so important. You heard what Brooks Orpik said. Brooks Orpik said he campaigned so hard for the Capitals to re-sign that guy because the guy just doesn't have a negative bone in his body. He's always positive. And when you're playing 82 games and then you got to play 24 more to win a cup, you got to have guys with positive energy around you because the least bit of negativity is going to take you down. And that's what was special about this team. I think they were a positive group of guys. They had a mix of young and older guys, whereas the year before there were a lot of veterans. On paper, they looked better. But, when you get these older guys with these younger kids, with the Varanas, the Burakovskis, the Stevensons, they bring an energy. And then you have, Oshie there, constant energy. And Ovi's he's human energy. It meshed really well. And the key was they did get some breaks, and they got incredible goaltending. And here we are, sitting 44 years later, finally with the Stanley Cup.
He is Ed Frankovic. He has chronicled all things Capitals since I met him in the press box in October of 1985. We were finally having that segment where the Caps won the Stanley Cup, and we're talking about all the whys and wherefores. I'll get back to the innocence and the celebratory part of all of this, and I don't know that it matters, Ed. I really don't know that it matters that they win the Stanley Cup ever again or next year or the year after that. But certainly the questions begin now about Carlson, about restricted free agents, about what kind of money Devontae Smith-Pelly is going to need, and all of these guys that are now have that Kempney, this thing next to their name that says Stanley Cup champion, that in every sport winds up getting them a bigger, better deal elsewhere.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it, Ness, and I think the key thing is I think June 18th we're going to find out the salary cap number. And I ran some numbers before we did this segment, and if they can get that cap to $82 million, they're sitting pretty good because Carlson's going to cost them probably somewhere in the 7.5 to 7.8 range if he decides to stay here. And I think the Capitals can offer the 8-year security where other teams can only offer 7. And they did that with Oshie, and I think that's going to be an advantage for them with Carlson. And I know John likes it here. His 2 young kids were born here. I think his wife is from this area. I know there's a lot of people saying John's going to go to New Jersey because he's a Jersey guy and they got a lot of money. There's talk he could go to McVee, with Vegas with the money. But I think at the end of the day, John likes the situation he has here. And I think 7.5 to 7.8, if they can do it 8 years at those numbers, and John was only making just under 4 this past season. So that's a hefty raise. It's on the order of Chris Letang money, some of the top defensemen in the league. Maybe he could get a 9 or a 10 somewhere else. But at the end of the day, how much money do you need, and do you like the situation you're in? Do you like the guys you're playing with? I know he's tight with Holtby. He's tight with Ovi. You gotta hope that he gives a little bit of a discount, and that's the number. As for Kempney, he made $900K this year. I think he's got to be number 2 on the sign list, be after Carlson, because you got to have defense in this league to win. We saw what a change that guy made as the 4th defenseman. I'm hoping if they can get him around $2 million, he stays, but he's unrestricted, so we'll see. But you look at Kempney. Yes, he was great in the playoffs, but he didn't play a full season, right? So there's a little bit of unsureness out there if somebody throws a lot of big money at him. So you got to hope that he likes the situation here, being the 4th D, and takes a short-term deal, because a year after next year, Brooks Orpik comes off the books. Brooks Orpik's one more year at $5.5 million. If the Capitals can somehow work the numbers and keep the majority of this team together, which I think they can do, if the number's 82, I think they can keep just about everybody, depending on what Smith-Pelly wants. Again, I don't know that he's going to get huge money. He's going to get good money, but he's not going to get huge money because his regular season numbers aren't huge.
He's not perceived as a difference maker, at all, right?
And he's a restricted free agent. There's the other thing about Smith-Pelly. He's a restricted free agency. They control him. Wilson's a restricted free agency, so they control him. These guys are going to get some bridge deals that McClellan could keep at lower numbers. So the key is going to be the Carlson number and the Kempney numbers. And if they can do that, and then Beagle's unrestricted. But fourth line centers aren't going to make a lot of money around the league. Again, everybody's cap tight. So I think that there's a very good chance they could keep a lot of these guys back and make another run at it. And then again, the Orpik contract comes off the books the following years. I think Philip Grubauer, he's unrestricted. I mean, he's restricted free agent at $1.5 million. If the cap's 80 instead of 82, then Grubauer is probably your guy who's moving on, and then they go with Copley as the backup or the kid coming over, the Russian kid, Samsonov. If he can get adjusted in the AHL quickly, then you got him as a potential. But, we got a lot of time in the summer to talk about that. The key is definitely John Carlson. I think they absolutely have to find a way to re-sign him.
Ed Frankovic will be writing and talking all things hockey as he does out on Twitter at Ed Frankovic, as well as Ed at WNST.net. The good old hockey game has brought the Stanley Cup to our region, and parades and madness and all of that. And, obviously I wrote this long piece about my relationship with Coach Trotz. You can read it out at WNST.net. I've played a lot of the sound, especially on Friday on the aftermath of our hours-long conversations with him in recent years as the Caps coach, which meandered about his work with Best Buddies and his background and the famous bottle of champagne and the skipjacks and player by player. But here we are at the end of the line, and Barry Trotz really is no longer the coach of the Capitals after the parade. And, I guess at some point in the next couple of days we'll hear it work itself out or not work itself out. I guess that's sort of the next thing that happens after you swim in the fountain and get the champagne shower and invite your friends like me and my wife to the Strip to put the Stanley Cup over your head and plot bringing the cup to Baltimore and all that. But this is a pretty crucial thing, right? And Reardon's under contract, and there were certainly some hurt feelings. I don't know that it's a done deal that Barry Trotz is coming back to coach, and people are talking about $7 million a year. I don't know that is the way that the Leonsis family was going to want to go. I don't know, but I don't think this is a foregone conclusion that it's rubber stamped that Barry's coming back.
Well, I think the ball's in his court, Ness. I think that's where it is right now, because you heard Brian McClellan say if he wants to come back, he's coming back. And Trotzy's a man of loyalty, and he's a man who is going to look at his life situation first. I mean, he's a very calm man. I mean, when we had him out at Michael's Cafe in March, I noticed a difference in him from years past. He didn't seem as stressed. He seemed much more relaxed. He seems, and he talks about something that happened last summer that really grounded him, and you can see that. And when you watch the clips of the way he is in the locker room, you can see that he has definitely evolved as a coach. But these players love him. I mean, you can see Ovechkin has an affinity for him. So I don't understand why the Washington Capitals want to move on from him. If I'm Barry Trotz, what openings are there out there? The Islanders? Do I want to go to New York? Do I want to go to Long Island, a team that's Lou Lamoriello's coming in there, but Lou's up there in age. How long is he going to be there? And what about, then there's rumors of Minnesota that Fenton, Paul Fenton, who he worked with in Nashville, is going to get rid of Boudreau this summer and try and make a run at Trotz. Ryan Suter's there, somebody that Barry Trotz helped develop, the top defenseman in the league. But Minnesota doesn't exactly have a stellar lineup. They have a good lineup, but I don't think they're a lineup better than the Washington Capitals. So, if I'm Barry Trotz, I'm looking at the money. He made $1.5 million this past 4 years. He's definitely due for a raise. How much that raise is, it depends on how much he wants and how much the Capitals are willing to give. The Capitals certainly made a lot of money here off this Stanley Cup run, and their rights and all their other off-ice things that help their payroll will certainly go up, their radio deal, their TV deal. So they will have more money to give to their coach. I know they probably gave more money to their GM. They signed McClellan to a new deal. That took a while to get announced during the season. So the Capitals have always been very tight with the money on their coaches and their GM. But I think having won a cup and this revenue stream that's going to come their way, and let's be honest, it's a business. I don't see how the Capitals could make the decision to not bring Barry Trotz back, given what he's done. And when you talk about Barry Trotz, you're not just talking about him. You're talking about Lane Lambert too. You're talking about Mitch Korn still being in the equation. I mean, Mitch Korn's been unbelievable with these goalies. I know they turned the goaltending coaching duties over to Scott Murray, but Mitch Korn is still a heavy factor, and he's still very much involved in these goalies. I saw a lot of Mitch in the playoffs. And then Lane Lambert, the job he's done with the forwards. I mean, look where Tom Wilson is coming 4 years. Look where Evgeny Kuznetsov is coming 4 years. Look at what Jacob Verana did in 1 year in the NHL under Lane Lambert. And look at Burakovsky, how much he's Brett Connolly in 2 years. I mean, you get rid of Barry Trotz, you're getting rid of Lane Lambert. I mean, Lane Lambert's done a fantastic job with these forwards. I don't know how the Washington Capitals organization can move on from these coaches. And Brian McClellan basically said as much. So I think it's up to Trotz. And you know Trotz better than I do, but, I mean, just knowing what I know about Trotz, he's a loyal guy. I see him coming back. I see the coaching staff back and trying to rekindle the magic again next season. And I just don't see things changing there. I mean, the key, I think Trotz will be back, and then the key is Carlson and Kempney.
You know, you did a blog and took a little deep breath after winning the Cup and wrote about your dad, but you wrote about every player, sort of, you know, the pathway and what these guys had to contribute. You know, I always said to you, if they're ever going to win a cup, it's going to be Ovechkin on the top, and there he sat in the middle of the room with the Conn Smythe Trophy after the game on Thursday night, and it was going to be because the goaltender was lights out, and they had that guy. He just needed to play that way, and it was going to be all these complimentary players. 19 guys score goals in the play. It's really kind of an incredible thing that every one of these guys had a moment at some point through every line where they did something to help this team win the Cup, and that's the way it is every year, right?
Yeah, definitely, Ness. And it was, like you said, I hope people go out and read the blog. And every player had to elevate their game. And again, going back to Lane Lambert, what I just mentioned with the forwards, the guys who really, really brought their games up that really needed it were forwards like Brett Connolly, Jacob Verana, Andre Burakovsky, and then, you know, your Devontae Smith-Pelly. I mean, those four guys just kind of elevated their games, and then I'm taking nothing away from Lars Eller, because Lars Eller was so important because we lose Backstrom for 4 games. We lose Kuznetsov in Game 2 of the Stanley Cup Finals 5 minutes into the game. So Lars Eller, huge, and thank goodness he's back already for the next 4 years or 5 years, because McClellan already re-signed him. But every one of these guys, like you said, had their moment. But the thing that really impressed me is the way Connolly, Verana, and Burakovsky, even though Burakovsky missed a lot of time with the injury, just the way those guys, the change from 2017 to 2018, the way they played in the playoffs, the way they used their bodies to win board battles, they used their speed to open up space.
Well, they went from being a deficiency to being a plus, right?
Yeah,
literally.
That was the switch you needed. When you lose to Justin Williams or Marcus Johansson, you need the switch. And Williams and Johansson, Johansson scored some big goals against Toronto to win the series, but Williams and Johansson, they weren't very good against the Penguins. I'll be honest; those guys, they didn't deliver, and they were another piece of the puzzle that didn't come through against Fleury and the Penguins in 2017. And here you got Game 5. The Caps are down 3-2 going into that third period. Let's not forget that. Jacob Verana sets up Kuznetsov for the breakaway to tie the game, and then there's Verana putting in the loose change on the Ovechkin rush for Game 5. It was when Trotz switched Verana up with Kuznetsov and Ovechkin in Game 5 that the Penguins series turned, because it looked like the Penguins were finding their game, and they were going to win that series. They were going to win Game 5 in Washington and go on to win the series. And he puts Verana on that top line right at the end of the second period, and that's when the series switched.
Ed Frankovic did something that we all did on Thursday night, watch the Washington Capitals skate the Stanley Cup and Ovechkin skating the Stanley Cup. Anything you want to add to any of this? Because, I mean, I'm sure we'll be coming back, and I have a feeling hockey's going to become a lot more relevant around here in the coming months, and the offseason, the comings and the goings will be more interesting to folks. And, you know, quite frankly, I saw interest shoot through the moon. It's going to be interesting to see what the Caps do with that in the aftermath of the parade. But anything to add here that I've missed out on? Because because I feel like I could sit here all day and talk about this, and I probably will.
I mean, you and I, we could go on, and I think it's been an amazing run, and we could Ovechkin, Backstrom, Oshie, you could go down the list, and it's just the way these guys came together as a team. And one thing that really caught my eye was a story I read. I think it was Barry from Svergula from the Washington Post wrote that he mentioned something Trotz said to them in February that really sunk in with him. And Trotz, he said to them, the reason we lose to the Penguins every year is because these little guys go in, Connor Sheary and they go in there, beat us these board battles, and we lose the games. And Niskanen said, something like that. He didn't yell at us. He just kind of made a statement, and he said it kind of resonated with me. Hey, it's about winning the little battles. It's the old Al Pacino. The inches we need are all around us. And that was the change. And of course, you have to have great goaltending. I mean, the save. I mean, you and I, we were at the other end of the rink, so we didn't get the best view of it there in Vegas in Game 2. But the save is kind of the Jacoby Jones moment, if you will, right?
Oh, the miracle, sure.
I mean, it was a miracle save, but Holtby did everything he was supposed to do in that position, but he needed the other guy to not bury the puck. We needed the safety for the Broncos to miss the ball for Jones to score and send it to overtime. So you need that luck, you need those bounces, but you make a lot of your luck too. And this team they stuck together. They were just an amazing group, and I can't wait for the Cup to come to Baltimore. What I will add is I like the fact that you're talking about multiple places, but like you said, they're going to tell you. I mean, Trotz is going to be able to bring it, or Ted Leonsis, whatever they decide to do. But we're going to need a big venue. I'm going to tell you that, Ness. We're going to need a big place because I think a lot of people are going to come out. There's a lot of people I know, a lot of people you know, a lot of people that follow hockey, have been kind of hanging back, and I think this is going to bring them out. And I think it's going to be a heck of a party. And, as bad as that Tom Ebrate champagne might taste, I'm going to have to take a swig. We've talked about it for 4 years.
Oh, man, we've been on it, and it's real, and it's here. And I don't know that I could write a bigger, better script. I guess I would have taken a few more pictures in the middle of the night, but there'll be more pictures with the Cup to come. Great memories for me, great memories for my wife all the way along. Watching the games with you, with Ted Starkey, brought even more color, I think, to the finals games, and just a great week of memories. I would say the only thing that would have made it better was 6 or 7 games, but I'll take 5. I'm good with the way it worked out.
I was very, very happy. Sunday night we weren't sitting in Capital One Arena with Game 6. I was very happy. Game 5, and I will add, not being there in Game 5, at first I felt a little, hey, man, it would have been nice to be on the ice, but I was happy you and Jen were there with everybody. And when my 8-year-old, who is a diehard Capitals fan, came down the steps, and I don't know if you know this or not, but as soon as the game ended, my wife said, Medell's is open. I drove over to Medell's in Arundel Mills and picked up a whole bunch of swag for my kids,
I still don't have a hat.
My father,
by the way,
my father-in-law.
I have nothing.
I spent $450 in there, Ness.
Wow.
And I came home and I put it on the table, and my 8-year-old did not know they won because you can't wake him up. He sleeps like a rock. And he comes down the steps and he's half groggy, and he looks at the table and he gives a weird look and he goes, "We won? We won?" And he starts jumping up and down, and it was worth every second of staying home at that moment.
It's 100 Christmas mornings, right? Like literally.
Exactly. It's exactly what it was. And I was happy to be there and tell my boys that they won. I shared it with my wife. I know it was great for you because you had your wife there. You're on the ice. The whole thing was perfect. We couldn't have scripted it any better.
It worked out the way it was supposed to work out, and whenever the Cup comes to Baltimore is when the Cup comes to Baltimore, and we'll appreciate it because it's the Cup, and it's coming to Baltimore. So enjoy the memories, enjoy the parade, the aftermath, enjoy the discounts, hopefully, on the gear coming down the pike. I got to spend a few bucks and get something. I own nothing yet. There was not like free swag just floating around the team party afterward. There was a very, very limited supply of hats that, quite frankly, most family members did not get any any hats. There was just the guy on the team that got the hat. So there weren't a whole lot of hats floating around in Las Vegas, and certainly there was a lot of sort of half-price conference championship merchandise at the airport on the strip for the Vegas Golden Knights and the Golden Misfits and all that stuff. But next year for them, to now, we are the victors and the spoils go to us. So we are the champions. We are the champions. Go read Ed's work at Ed Frankovic on Twitter, as well as Ed at WNST.net. I'm out in the buyatoyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world. Our morning newspaper ships directly to your email inbox, free of charge each and every morning. It also features the Maryland Jockey Club and our Laurel entries for the weekend, as well as on the front of our WNST.net website, our partners at the Maryland Jockey Club racing yet again in the aftermath of a Triple Crown victory for Justify. So big props to Bob Baffert, Mike Smith, and the whole team there for making that happen and having a nice little stay here in Baltimore a few weeks ago. And I'll be grabbing Bob Baffert before the week is over as well. Boy, so much going on. NBA champs, Capitals, the death of Anthony Bourdain. We got mini camp this week for the Ravens. The Orioles are doing nothing, and I'm furious about it. And I'm going to start writing my Dear Orioles series this week, so you're going to want to check that out. I inked a blog about my love of hockey and my bender in Las Vegas with head coach Barry Trotz. So you can go check that out at WNST.net as well as on our social. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST, Towson, Baltimore. We never stop talking Baltimore sports.